Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with the latest unexpected development in this presidential race. Former President Donald Trump has apparently been targeted for assassination for a second time, this time at his Palm Beach golf course. And now a full-scale multi-agency investigation is underway. Our team coverage begins with Bloomberg's Steve Potisk in Washington.
The Secret Service says it opened fire on a man standing at the fence with a weapon with a scope. Secret Service special agent in charge of the Miami field office is Rafael Barros.
Our agents engaged. We are not sure right now if the individual was able to take a shot at our agents, but for sure our agents were able to engage with the subject.
An AK-style firearm was recovered near the course and a vehicle detained. They say the suspect was 300 to 500 yards from Trump. He's identified as 58-year-old Ryan Routh and is in custody. In Washington, Steve Potisk, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Steve, thank you. Well, federal officials say the suspect, Ryan Routh, has 8 arrests on his record, apparently for minor offenses. In addition to the AK-47-style rifle, the Secret Service says it also retrieved 2 rucksacks and a GoPro camera. This latest incident follows the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania in July, which prompted criticism of the Secret Service and the resignation of its director. Bloomberg political contributor Jeannie Sheehan-Zaino says this will raise even further scrutiny.
How is it that somebody got an AK-47 within what the FBI said is 400 to 500 yards of him on a golf course? So I am racking my brain to figure out if in American history we have had a candidate and former president who has been the victim of an attempted assassination, not once but twice within 2 months on the campaign trail.
Bloomberg political contributor Jeannie Sheehan-Zaino says the former president responded to the incident in a text to supporters saying, "My resolve is stronger after another attempt on my life."
And Karen, this comes as the former president looks to move past his most recent debate, which polls show most voters think Vice President Kamala Harris won. Bloomberg's Kevin Whitelaw says it's unclear if this latest incident will affect the race.
The first one obviously did have a bit of an impact on the polls, and but I think we're pretty far down, and the race is in a very different place. You had Kamala Harris coming out of the debate with a lot of momentum. The polls have recently been showing it being very strong. Unclear to me yet whether this really is going to change those dynamics, but I do think the political rhetoric has just been getting super intense on both sides.
Bloomberg's Kevin Whitelaw adds the White House released a statement saying President Biden and Vice President Harris were briefed about the security incident and relieved to know Trump is safe. In a post on her X account, Harris said she was deeply disturbed, adding that violence has no place in America.
And Nathan, hours before the apparent assassination attempt, Trump responded to pop star Taylor Swift's recent endorsement of Kamala Harris. In his social media post, the former president wrote in all caps, "I hate Taylor Swift." Swift endorsed Harris minutes after last week's debate, driving hundreds of thousands of visitors to the vote.gov voter registration website.
Well, let's turn now from politics, Karen, to markets. We are 2 days away from an expected rate cut from the Federal Reserve, and Bloomberg's John Tucker is here with more. So, John, at least a quarter-point cut seems baked in the cake at this point.
Yeah, Nathan, the current market pricing from the CME places the odds of a 0.25% cut at just about 60%. The odds of a jumbo cut of 50 basis points, that stands around 40%. Wade Lee at BlackRock says this consensus view is right. The economy just doesn't need a jumbo cut.
The big picture is that U.S. growth is doing okay. You look at their own, Fed's own nowcast growth model. Q3 GDP is tracking 2.5%.
Well, Wei Li of BlackRock says the economy is okay, and the S&P 500, she points out, is less than 1% away from its record high. This would be the first rate cut from Fed officials since March of 2020. That's when rates were slashed to cope with the downturn from the pandemic. Now, cutting rates during a presidential cycle, that is a rarity. Since 1990, the Fed has cut rates in the final 2 months of a presidential campaign only 3 times. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. And traders also monitoring central bank activity around the globe this week. Bank of England policymakers are expected to keep rates on hold after cutting last month. And the Bank of Japan is also projected to hold after raising rates twice this year.
And economic data out of China, Karen, showed a string of misses, especially on industrial production. Bloomberg's Asia government and politics correspondent Rebecca Chung-Wilkin says pressure is mounting on Chinese authorities to ramp up stimulus to ensure the country hits its 5% growth target.
We saw the lowest levels since 1996, again suggesting the sort of low demand from consumers, as low willingness, and credit data also came in relatively weak too. So in some ways just reinforcing that very negative backdrop.
Bloomberg's Rebecca Chung-Wilkin says the Chinese central bank is signaling it'll prioritize fighting deflation. That indicates more monetary easing may be ahead. Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, and Morgan Stanley are among banks downgrading their growth forecasts for China this year.
Well, now to the latest on the war in the Middle East, Nathan. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning the Houthi militant group will pay a heavy price after a hypersonic missile landed in central Israel over the weekend. The Iran-backed group fired a missile that evaded interception by Israeli and U.S. forces. No deaths were reported, but it marks a setback for Israel's air defense system.
And elsewhere in geopolitics, U.S. and British officials are growing increasingly concerned that Russia is giving nuclear weapons technology to Iran. Western officials tell Bloomberg they fear the Kremlin is trading nuclear secrets for ballistic missiles to use in its war with Ukraine. President Biden is set to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the UN General Assembly next week to discuss Zelensky's war strategy ahead of the U.S. election.
And finally, Nathan, we have a company note this morning. Boeing's credit is at risk of being cut to junk as its worker strike threatens production and cash flow. Moody's Ratings placed the plane maker on review for a downgrade. Boeing has $45 billion in net debt, and it's been bleeding cash after paring back output following the near-catastrophic Alaska Air incident in January. And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. A new tropical threat heading into the Carolinas today as potential tropical storm Helene. Tropical storm warnings are expanded from South Carolina all the way to the Outer Banks. The system is forecast to drive inland towards Myrtle Beach and Wilmington, North Carolina, before pushing deeper into Charlotte and Raleigh by the afternoon. Tomorrow, the system moves into parts of West Virginia and Western Virginia. The storm could produce flash flooding, with totals reaching as high as 8 inches of rain in parts of the Carolinas, along with a 1 to 3 foot storm surge. There was mayhem at a New York City subway station when 2 officers confronted a 37-year-old man who had not paid his fare. Police say the suspect told the officers on the platform to stop following him or he will kill them. The suspect then pulled a knife from his pocket. The confrontation then moved inside a train. Police say they shot the man after tasering him did not work. He is under guard in critical condition at a Brooklyn hospital. 2 innocent bystanders were also shot. Interim NYPD Commissioner Thomas Donlan.
I'm especially concerned about bystanders, people who are just trying to get where they're going, being the victims of harm in this situation. But let's not forget why this started. It started because somebody wanted to come to the transit system with a weapon.
A 49-year-old bystander was shot in the head and is in critical condition. A 26-year-old woman was also wounded and is in stable condition. A 40-year-old officer was also shot. He's in stable condition. Another member of the Jackson 5 has died. Tito Jackson was one of the 5 brothers that also included Jackie, Jermaine, Marlon, and Michael. The family group, which was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1997, produced several #1 hits in the 1970s, including I Want You Back, ABC, and I'll Be There. Tito Jackson was 70. FX's Shogun won for Best Drama at the 2024 Emmy Awards, as The Best in Television was honored last night, aired on ABC. As for Outstanding Comedy,
the award goes to, the Emmy goes to, Hacks.
Hacks star Jean Smart also won Best Comedy Actress. Jeremy Allen White won the Emmy for lead actor in a comedy series for his work in The Bear. Global news 24 hours a day. And It with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. It was a bizarre game that the Giants played in Washington. The Commanders had 7 possessions. They never punted, never turned it over, never scored a touchdown, but they did kick field goals on all 7 possessions, all by Austin Seibert, who they had signed last week. The last one gave Washington a 21-18 victory. The Giants didn't have a kicker. Graham Gano hurt his hamstring on the opening kickoff, many wondering why they didn't have a second kicker in uniform since Gano had been bothered by a groin injury last week. Without him, the Giants missed an extra point, twice unsuccessfully went for 2 points. In defeat, the rookie wideout Malik Neighbors was terrific. 10 catches, 127 yards, but Neighbors picked a bad time for his one drop. It came on a late 4th down play. The Jets won at Tennessee, 24-17. Aaron Rodgers, 2 touchdown passes, and finally a Jets winning quarterback.
I hadn't had that in a long time. Being able to have that interview on the field after the game means you won, means you played halfway decent. So good to get a win. These are kind of the games you look back on late in the season and you're thankful that you won these, because if we want to be a great team, we got to win in these type of environments against teams like that.
Jets defense much better, had 4 sacks, forced 2 Titans turnovers. Among the teams off to a 2-0 start, Houston with a win last night over Chicago, 19-13. New Orleans, 2 wins by 62 points. The Saints won in Dallas by 25. Alvin Kamara scored 4 touchdowns. Minnesota is 2-0 with an upset of San Francisco. Sam Darnold, a 97-yard TD pass to Justin Jefferson. Yankees finished a 5-2 homestand, beat the Red Sox 5-2. Aaron Judge, home run number 53. Carlos Rodon, his 15th win. Baltimore lost. Yankees are 3 games ahead. Start a road trip tomorrow in Seattle. The Mets lost in the bottom of the 9th inning at Philadelphia, 2-1. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports, Karen and Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. It is another stunning development in a presidential campaign that has had more than its share of those. For the second time this cycle, former President Donald Trump has been the apparent target of an assassination attempt, this time at his golf course in West Palm Beach. Rick Bradshaw is the sheriff in Palm Beach County, Florida.
The Secret Service did exactly what they should have done. They provided exactly what the protection should have been, and their agent did a fantastic job.
Again, Palm Beach Sheriff Rick Bradshaw. We are joined now by Bloomberg News senior editor Bill. Good morning. First off, what is the latest that we know about this apparent assassination attempt?
Well, what we've heard from Secret Service and the police there in West Palm Beach was that the president, former president, was out on the golf course. They sent per security measures, they had a Secret Service agent going 1 hole ahead of him on the golf course. That agent or those agents spotted a rifle getting poked through a fence on the perimeter of the golf course. They quickly started firing in that direction. The person who was there seemed to drop the weapon and run, and they captured a 58-year-old man named Ryan Routh on the highway a little bit north of West Palm Beach. They said he had scopes, he had a GoPro camera, things like that. We don't know too many details about him at this point, other than he is 58 years old, appears to have been living in Hawaii, and has a long history of interactions with law enforcement, including, according to NBC News, citing court documents, a conviction for having a machine gun at one point, also charges for a hit and run. So someone who has been known to law enforcement over the decades. On social media, he seems to have been very agitated by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He did an interview with the New York Times last year talking about how he claimed to be trying to recruit foreign soldiers to go fight on Ukraine's behalf there against Russia. So quite a complicated history. We're still waiting to see, if there's a mugshot and we get formal charges in this. But it does seem like the Secret Service identified the threat before that person was able to get too close to former President Trump.
So, Bill Ferries, as our senior editor for Bloomberg News, I know you'll be assessing the potential political impact of this latest incident involving former President Trump. Yet another attempt, apparently, on his life. To put sort of a crass point on it, could this move the needle in the presidential race with 50 days to go till the election?
Yeah, super volatile campaign even before this happened. This adding another big variable to it. We saw was a couple months ago on that during that first assassination attempt on Donald Trump. We did see him get a little boost in support. This time, it'll take a few days to see. This time, it's a different campaign. It's a different race already, as crazy as it sounds to say that. Obviously, Kamala Harris is now the candidate, no longer Joe Biden. We don't so far have a lot of video or photo footage of what happened there at the golf course. We did have real-time live television cameras rolling during the first assassination attempt. I think the bigger political picture here, though, is this does offer Donald Trump and the Republican Party a chance to move on from the discussion that had been centered on a relatively poor debate performance just less than a week ago. A lot of the talk since then, of course, has centered around Trump's comments about immigrants allegedly eating people's pets in Ohio. That has not been a winning topic for Republicans or former President Trump. This does allow them to maybe shift the debate back to something that's perhaps more on their terms, like the economy, where voters still give former president high marks. So that's probably one of the bigger political impacts. We'll see in the coming days whether there's also a bump in the polls, just like a sympathy bump from this latest attempt on his life.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.